My name is Janet Antone. I am the administrator for Indigenous London Arts through the London Arts Council. I am here today interviewing Emily Schuyler, who is the incoming specialist for Indigenous London Arts through London Arts Council. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Anytime I do any talk or anything, I always start with an introduction and an Ida. And like to say, I talk like a baby, so I know very limited, but I try my best. So, Sagali, Yukatilani, Niyoget, Satayuni, Niyukatilora, Onitaga, Nikokunjo. Very short introduction. It just says, hello, my name is Yukatilani. My English name is Emily, which is easier for some people. I am Wolf Clan from Oneida Nation of the Thames. When I do artist talks, I like to make the joke that we're 45 minutes outside of London, 20 depending on how fast you drive. So that's a little bit about me, or where I'm from and who I am. I'm also a visual artist, so I've spent, 6 years in different art schools. I went to Fanshawe College here to get an advanced diploma in fine art, and then I went out to New Mexico to the Institute of American Indian Arts to get a bachelor's degree in studio arts with an emphasis in jewelry making. So that's my emphasis. I kind of do everything, but
yeah. Love that. I feel like we don't see a lot of fine arts Indigenous artists. Mm-hmm. I find like artistic practices are usually rooted in like community, like doing like high tanning or like basket making or beadwork, like those more culturally traditional avenues. So what drew you to fine arts?
So I love drawing. Every artist is like, I drew since I was like a baby and this and that. And I really did. Like growing up, we didn't have a lot, but we always had pen and paper. So that's like what my mom had too growing up. So we were always drawing, and like she humored us. I remember one time I drew like an oval with legs, and she's like, I'm like, do you know what this is? And she's like, yeah, it's like Scooby-Doo, which was like a guess, and it was. And I was like so excited that it's still in my memory. And then I grew up like doing art to try to make like art contests to make some kind of money every day. Like, oh hey, any money I won from art contests as a kid, I gave to my mom. So I didn't even keep it. I was like, here you go. I went to high school and I was like, I don't want to be an artist. I hate art. Not gonna do that. Ended up, you have to take like an art class. I even took music to get out of my art class. And I think my grade 12 year, I was like, I want to do art. And then I ended up going to college for it. Kind of last minute on a whim. But going through like kind of this colonial institution, this Western institution of fine art and what fine art means was kind of difficult to navigate because I come from a family of artists, and my auntie went there like 30 years ago. When I went there, they had the largest Indigenous cohort they've ever had in the 50 years of the program. It's longer now, which was 5 students. Like 5 of us were Native, and we all made it through together. But it was like, that's your largest group of Natives you guys have ever had? And like going to the school, like on the res, your whole class is Native. Your whole class is from community. But then also navigating how like the definition of fine art, like what is fine art? It's made by learned men. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Painting is fine art. Sculpture is fine art, but only if it looks like this. Mm-hmm. So then, like the teachers were great, and like they tried to understand like where I was coming from my perspective. If I wanted to use leather, if I wanted to like bead or whatever. So they were really great trying to understand, but you can't fully get it because they're not from community. They didn't grow up with these same things. I messed up a piece of leather once, and I cried about it. And they're like, why? Just get a new piece. Like, it's just like paper, right? Like, you're printmaking. Like, it's whatever. Just start a new one. I'm like, no, this is a deer. This is, like, sacred. This is, like, something that's so different. Just the way we see materials, even. Mm-hmm. So, navigating what fine art, the definition of it is. I then got to go to the Institute of American Indian Arts, which is like an Indigenous art school, which was great. And then you don't have to like explain why you're doing something. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this because it like connects to my community. They're like, no, we get it. Like you don't have to explain it. Like absolutely, I would have done the same thing for my hometown. And I was like, that was so great just to feel. But then you get to talk about the art historical canon, how like we call it craft art or folk art, how Indigenous art has been kept away from being labeled as fine art is like this elusive thing that like only white men make fine art. And Native art or any art that's other is folk art, it's craft, it's artifact versus art. So like being able to talk to practicing artists or art historians who are Indigenous and who can be like, yeah, absolutely, this is like what they think it is, but who wrote that? And when we like look at it, so those were like experiences I think that like really helped me. Like I got to see the Western side of it and it was great, and I came out of that program really prepared technically, and it helped me a lot to like stand up for like, this is what I do and this is why I do it. And you don't understand it maybe because you're not Indigenous, but you're not gonna make me change my mind. I had one professor who's like, you should like print on something that's traditional, and I was like silk, and I'm like, that's not that's not me. Like we never would have done that. Like this is why I print on leather. But then also going to like Santa Fe, and I'm like, oh, I print on leather because of like this. Or no, it's a like sacred material to a lot of Indigenous communities. But also going out there, you got to see that like there's so many different Indigenous communities, even for Canada and America. And then you get to see different, like, in Canada, when you say, like, oh, I make fine art, or I make art, and because you're Indigenous, they think you make, like, West Coast paintings, or they think you make woodland-style paintings, or even, like, Inuit carvings. And I'm like, no, like, they're so contemporary. I'm like, I could be a painter, and it's still Native art. I could be a jeweler, and it's Native art. And then coming from that to down south, you get to see that what they're looking for is cowboys and Indians. And tourism sells it hard down there. So if you go to like downtown Santa Fe, you can get a cowboy hat anywhere. You can get a lot of like native jewelry. I don't know, just these different experiences to like navigate what fine art is to me as an Indigenous person, what Native art is, I guess. I had a piece that went to the Smithsonian craft show, and I wasn't there to present it, but my professor was. And he's like, oh, you had all these like non-Indigenous women being like, how is this Native art? Because they have that preconception of what they think Native art is and what it should look like. And it was like a ring that had like an eyeball on it and like eyelashes. This is a whole thing. And it's contemporary, and it doesn't look like what maybe you think Native art looks like. And he's like, this is Native art because she's an Indigenous artist and she made it. It doesn't matter what it is or what it looks like. She's Native. It's Native art. But just to know that you have people who have your back is a big thing.
So if you could give your younger artist self words of advice or like things to consider, what would it be? Or if you were talking to like youth artists, Indigenous youth artists, what advice would you give them when considering a career as like an artist or within an art practice?
Take up more space. I was blessed with a mom who was always like, speak your mind, and you like belong anywhere that anyone else does, which not everybody gets. And even with my mom being so like outspoken, there were times where I'm like, I just want to fit in. I went to high school and I was like, I'm not gonna get in fights anymore, and I'm not gonna do this anymore, and I'm not gonna I think about like our town shoes. When I was little, my dad had we had town shoes and we had the res shoes. And I wanted to wear my town shoes everywhere because they were pretty and they were clean. And he's like, no, you can't, because those are your town shoes. They have to stay clean. You can't wear them on the res roads. You can't wear them outside. So I come from that kind of idea. So I went from the res or Oneida, going from school, and I was going to high school in town. And I was like, I want to be I have to be proper. You have to you have to fit in I wanted to fit in their box. Teenage years are hard. You want to fit in. You don't want to be different. Or you are different and no one understands me. And I think I don't regret high school. I think if anything, I wish I took up more space. I wish I was more outspoken and how I was when I was younger on the res. And it's scary navigating this place where it's oh, that's town, that's big, and it's scary. And if you don't fit in, things happen. Microaggressions of racism, things like that. Even just being a good student, I was a grade A student, but still starting out and people found out I was like from the res, and my teacher's like, oh, I thought you were gonna be like a degenerate like the rest of them, and I'm like, I'm your top student, and I'm like, wild that you feel comfortable enough to say that to my face, and like, how does that make you feel? And it's like, just because my skin was like brown, you thought I was gonna be like a degenerate. I'm like, yeah. So then it doesn't make you feel good either. Like, cause then I don't want to go back to class. I'm like, I'm your top student now. I don't want to be here. But I was always looking to like, I guess, be a role model to my sisters, and I think definitely to my younger self, I'd be like, take up more space. You'd belong here as much as anybody else does. Ask for more. Like exactly what you said. You never. It's always a no unless you ask.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, it's always a no. Take up more space. Like, use your voice. Your opinion's valid, even if they're not ready to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's scary to be the first in something, but you're usually not. Like, I went to Fanshawe for fine art. My auntie went there years before me, and she was probably the only Native student in her class. I was like blessed to have like 4 other people with me. Sorry. So I was like, yeah. But it still feels scary, like going into these institutions and things, but knowing that like you belong here as much as anybody else does. Like, you have the same training. I think imposter syndrome is something that's big for us sometimes. Even I get it. The Smithsonian craft show, and I'm like, should I be here? And it's like, absolutely you should. Seeking out opportunities like that, even if they say no, you never would have known unless you tried. Rejection, I think, can be hard too. But like, becoming an artist, you get used to it, and it's hard. But like, applying to everything, even if it's not, having like an Indigenous art show is great because it feels like so community-based wise. And sometimes there's like been a couple shows that I've been a part of, and I'm like, I don't know how my work feels with the others, but I had every right to be there. Like, if I had leather work in an art show versus like someone else is like, we're doing printing and this and that, and I'm like, I absolutely belong to be here. Just because I print on leather doesn't mean any different, or just because my art is pouches or leather, like medicine bags, that doesn't make any different than like a sculpture someone else did. That is like these colonial or Western views of what fine art is, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely think that like there's a struggle of like some spaces you feel too Indigenous, other spaces you don't feel Indigenous enough, right? Like, I feel like you gave perfect examples of that, like having your work in the Smithsonian, which is like a huge deal, by the way. Like, just as an artist in general, like not a lot of artists get to show their work in the Smithsonian, so like that's major. But to have that questioned because it doesn't conform to the idea of what people want Indigenous art to be, but then also having your work a part of like your class show where it's all everybody's art practice, and then feeling like that's too Indigenous because you're working with leather, like you're finding your practice and developing, which is what everybody else is doing. But because yours is like rooted somewhere else, it's like not seen as like it's othered automatically, right? And so it's like, I think navigating that also, like, I love that message of it being like, say your truth even if your voice shakes. Yeah. You deserve to advocate for yourself as hard as like you advocate for other people.